Aloha and welcome to another episode of Ancient Oblivion, where we talk about the plasma apocalypse. I'm JayDreamerZ. Today, we're going to be talking about the devil's hand. What is the devil's hand? Have you ever seen a hand sign that looks similar to this? I have. As part of what I do, I like to research ancient pictures and paintings, and I was recently on a trip to Washington, D.C., to record my Chasing the Apocalypse series. And while I was there, I was at this art museum, and I started to notice on almost every painting I walked past, I saw that. I saw this particular hand gesture where the two fingers were always kept together. Sometimes it was like this, sometimes it was like that. It didn't really seem to have a preference, but I always saw these two middle fingers stuck together. And I started thinking about it. I started thinking about what the reason for this could be, aside from, some explanations I've heard on the internet, like this is a W or this is an M or this represents certain things. I started thinking about it from the perspective of the plasma apocalypse. While I was in Washington, D.C., I started piecing together and looking for clues of our ancient oblivion and the founders of this country and the origins of humanity, really, and where these people come from and what their history is. And then it dawned on me. I realized what this sign was. I realized what it meant. So without any further ado, let's check out some examples of this particular hand sign. Now, sometimes you'll see it separated a few different ways. Okay, so I'll get to that in just a minute. And this will make sense in a bit too. So I had these two pictures at the beginning, but pay attention to these horns on this lady right here. Anyways, starting with this first image right here, this is easy to overlook. If you're not really diving into the picture and really taking a good hard glimpse into the painting itself, it's easy to bypass. It's easy to think, oh, that's no big deal. But it is a big deal when it shows up time and time and time again. This one right here, for example, Mother Mary, the Black Madonna, and little baby Jesus. You might not see it at first until you really start looking at the hands. What are these hands doing? What's happening here? Why is she holding it? It's very unnatural to do this. Okay, I can do it because I've practiced all kinds of weird, things with my fingers and stuff like that, just to see what it's like, what it feels like and stuff. But it's a very unnatural position for the fingers to fall, for the fingers to be in. It's not very natural for your fingers to automatically just separate on the sides like that and keep these two middle fingers locked together. But I've got about 1 million different examples here where you never would have noticed it at first. You just think it's just some natural hand position, but it's not. And then we start seeing other anomalies. It's not just the hand. It's not just this particular hand gesture. There's other things. We're going to start building context for the deeper meaning behind these things. And this is one of the things that I love to do, is using tools like comparative mythology to figure out what it means. What is the origin? Who are these people that are clearly passing signs to other people who know what they mean? So let's look for some of these clues. Okay, here's another picture. Now, one of the clues that I'm starting to notice on all of these images is that there's a lot of royalty. Now, don't get me wrong. I know during the medieval times and the Dark Ages and stuff, royalty were, I'm sure someone's going to scream, those are the only people who could afford to have their portraits painted or whatever. I disagree. I think that there's a lot of different people. These people have their hands painted this way, not because they were posing like this, but the artist made their hands look like that. The artist can manipulate the person who's posing any way they want to. Look how purposeful the fingers are here. Here's another one. This guy's completely missing an arm. Or you could say he's mutilated. He's also missing an eye. This patch goes all the way up and around his eye. Now, this is interesting. Here's some more context for the devil's hand, or the gestures of the devil's hand. Mutilation. Interesting. We're going to come back to that. We're going to come back to mutilations, but keep that in mind. He's missing an arm. He's missing an eye. There's something wrong with his body, and he's making this particular hand gesture. Same one. And it's not the same artist. These are multiple different artists from across history. Here's another one. And you can see she's throwing up a little hand sign like that. The thumb does not seem to matter. Have you noticed that? Just like in this one, you don't see the thumb. If it was vitally important, the thumb would be included. But it's not vitally important. As you can see here, it's not included. What is vitally important are those two middle fingers fused together. Let's check out a few more examples before we dive into some theories and some ideas. Heather, thanks for your sticker in the super chat. I appreciate you. Here it is again, the two middle fingers clearly together with a strong separation between the other two. Sometimes you'll see pictures like this where they have a ring on the other two fingers, but not on the middle two fingers. Well, that's interesting to me, especially whenever I share with you my theory of why they're doing this. Remember that, a ring on top, a ring on bottom. Now, as you can see, looks like a noble, looks like somebody who is of fancy birth. This dude is just chilling, straight up modern, throwing up the west side. Now, let's take a look at this because we've got a little bit more context going on here, okay? All of this is just the painting or whatnot, but look at the hand sign. He's clearly, like if this was a modern picture, this would be a modern person just like throwing it up, right? But look at how he's doing it here. One finger, it's the ring finger is underneath. Okay, so he's curling the ring finger underneath this one to really fuse them together, to lock them together, to make them almost like they're one. Okay, he's crossing the middle finger right there. Now I've seen that in a few pictures. Here we have a picture of Jesus being led to the crucifixion, I believe. Now, not only do we find it here on Jesus, who, by the way, immediately after his crucifixion went down into the underworld to preach to the spirits or people who lived down in the hollow earth, in the underworld. That's going to come into play here, believe it or not. Now, not only is he doing it, but we've got some other people here also who are doing the same hand symbol. Now, it's not featured on any of the people who are trying to crucify him or leading him to his death. It's featured on these other people. Let me see if I can find any more examples there. I think that's it on him. Here he is again, Jesus once again, throwing it up twice. Once on the crucifix itself, and then another down below. I would love to hear all of your theories too, by the way, in the comments section. I'm gonna check it out. I'm gonna go read the comments after the video. But we've got many different artists who have the same hand sign. Oftentimes it's put over the chest, or some would say over the heart area. It doesn't have to be. I've seen it in different places, but it is oftentimes found there. Here's another Victorian age painting. You have the woman clearly kind of bending it a little bit. It's almost like a claw sometimes. They bend these fingers in unnatural positions like I'm doing. I've practiced it a few times. So you could, like these outer two ones, they'll bend them in these unnatural positions. Here it is again. An aristocratic noble woman. She's also crossing her fingers. Just like that, as you can see. Now notice her little pinky is actually kind of crooked. You don't notice that? The pinky's a little crooked there? Yes. All right, let's see. We've got another one where she's sort of just touching her chest there. I'll explain what that traditionally means here in a moment. Here we have a nude noblewoman painting. And, you know, it probably didn't look directly at her hand to begin with, but that's okay. Here it is. Here it is. And as you can see, she's got them together, and then that top one is like bent, kind of weird. I don't know. It's kind of bent in this weird way. Here's another one. This one's very interesting. So they're going to get more interesting as we go. Now check this out. So we have a man reading a book to this woman, and she has two fingers, her front two fingers, facing outward. Her thumb is kind of hidden behind her hair there, but I'm assuming it's something like that. And then her back two fingers are hidden like this, but you can see they're probably curled. And then her other hand over here, she's got something else going on. We'll come back to this particular hand gesture in a moment, okay? But keep this in mind. Now she's got what she's displaying as a separation here in her hand with two fingers and then two other fingers here, or are they? The baby, let's check out the baby. Now the baby, this is like an angel. This is like a cherub over here. They have normal hands. But then the baby over here, which is the woman's baby, doesn't seem to be too happy. He looks kind of pissed off. He looks kind of like, this sucks, right? He's just born. Well, what's wrong with him? He's only got 3 fingers, apparently. Maybe 4, I don't know. You could imagine there's more than that, but the only ones that are displayed, the only ones that are shown are 1, 2, and 3. Okay, could be a coincidence. Let's continue on and see what else we got here. Here's another noble woman. A noble woman. And she's definitely making a show of the 2 fingers sticking. This time it's straight down, and she's kind of bending the other 2 a little bit. And her other hand, the other one just has the pinky separated, and these ones are together. This is all going to start to make sense. Stick with me. Now, here's the hand to the chest symbol once again. Here we have the Madonna and child once again. The child this time is doing 2 fingers together inward, 2 fingers together outward. And the mother, of course, is curling her middle fingers or crossing the middle fingers to create that shape once again. Here we have another nobleman also doing it here at the bottom of the picture, if you can see that. This dude kind of looks like Mark Zuckerberg, I think. Here we have the 2 fingers. Look how close these 2 fingers are. They almost look connected. Almost. That's pretty dang close. Does he look like Mark Zuckerberg? What do you guys think? I don't know. I feel like these people, have certain family lineages. Here she is again. Here's another woman putting it up towards her shoulder area, separating, keeping the middle fingers together, as you can see right over here. Here's another example of a noble woman. This time it's like she's playing with her necklace, but she's at the same time crossing her fingers, her 2 middle fingers, just like that. Here's another woman. She's holding it to her chest as well, surrounded by the cherubs. Now, she's looking into the mirror. Okay, so this is a beauty standard thing. Okay, so if we take a look at what's happening here, she's checking herself out. Okay, beauty and the standard of beauty is playing a part in connection with what's going on with the fingers. Just like I talked about the other picture, the other portrait where the guy was mutilated, right? Not beautiful, we would typically say. Here's another woman, elegant, standing as a noble woman with her fingers tightly together at the middle. Here's a guy who's straight up throwing the west side. In the modern world, we pretty much call that the west side, right? Which I'm going to share that with you. That's a part of it too, believe it or not, actually. Because those rappers, they're not gangster. Those weren't originally gang signs, okay? This is the gang. This is where it comes from. Those people signed a deal with the devil, which I'll talk about here towards the end. And that's why they're throwing up those diamonds and W's and all that stuff. Those are not, it has nothing to do with Crips and Bloods and, you know what I mean, local gangs or whatever. Here's this guy. Look at his pinky. It's kind of crooked going on down here. He's got it going on with the crooked pinky or broken pinky, it looks like. I don't know. I have to force mine to do that. Here it is again. Another woman who is sort of playing with her necklace there, playing with her object of beauty. Here it is again. Sideways. Boom. Here it is again. Boom. Here it is again. Boom. This time a little interlocked there at the middle. But look at those weird outer fingers kind of bent like that. That's unnatural. Now she is gripping something with her top finger, if you can tell. Here it is again with the fingers crossed in the middle. And here's one of my favorite pictures and my favorite depictions. And this is where I first noticed this, because I have this, they call this the Flammarion engraving. It's not really an engraving, but it kind of looks like an engraving style. I have this hanging over my bed right behind me. If I were to take down the green screen, this is a huge tapestry right above my bed. And I noticed, oh my God, what is he doing with his hand? Why is he keeping his middle two fingers out like that? It's like he's reaching out like a claw towards the heavens. And then I looked a little closer and I thought to myself, are those two fingers fused? There's like no line. No. Could just be coincidence. Could be. But whenever you take coincidence upon coincidence upon coincidence and you stack them all together and you get like hundreds and hundreds of examples that look the exact same as one another across time, across cultures, across mediums, it's no longer a coincidence. Tupac, by the way, who is not a hardcore gangster rapper, he's a gay dude that plays the part of a hardcore gangster rapper. That's actually how he got his start, was in movies. And he played a gangster rapper, or a gangster, I should say. And the people really liked his character. So they hired him. He signed a deal with the devil to play that part forever, to be that person, and to be a celebrity that's known as Tupac Shakur. And they do that with different people. If you play your part well enough on screen or on the stage or whatever, I say they, you know who they are. They will come and hire you. They will ask you to sign a deal where you will become famous, you will be cast into the public light, and you will be a mouthpiece or a mascot for the system. You will share whatever they want you to share, and you'll stay in that role. It's an active role that you're actively playing. You're never supposed to be out of character, and you get paid well, and you get pretty much everything you could ever want. And that's the role that they play. Tupac is absolutely no exception. I mean, like, dude, when gangsters never, like, that's, you know what I mean? Tying the headband like that. Yeah, okay. If you've seen some of the pictures of how Tupac dresses, and he's a little too clean, he's a little too pretty, you know what I mean? He's a very metropolitan looking gangster, if I do say so myself. And I've seen some gangsters. I used to live in Compton, where I went to junior high school. Here's some more gangsters. There are actors. like I'm not accusing them of being actors. They literally are actors. All right. So we're going to transition from antiquity, from the hand sign, the W, we'll call it the three fingers. The thumb doesn't really matter that much. In antiquity, from the Dark Ages to the medieval times to the Victorian ages, all the way up to the modern age and music industry, and now movies. This is from the recent Avatar movie, where you can see the Na'vi, Avatar people or beings or whatever. They, if I could zoom in enough, it's way at the edge of the picture. They have three fingers. Okay, I've got a better, here's a better picture of the Avatar people. Three fingers, and only three fingers. So if I'm going to emulate these people who have three fingers, I'm going to put at least two of my fingers together, right? In some way, some fashion. But this is the easiest fashion, is to put these two middle ones together. Now we have the three-finger claw. Now, these creatures in the movie, at the very least, were considered by the Marines who landed on their planet to be sort of like devils. And they also inversely considered the Marines to be devils. But now we're touching on the truth in the movies. These human-like, humanoid people, very tall, gigantic, or giants in comparison to the humans that landed on their planet Pandora, blue-colored, different-colored, giant people who have godlike strength and abilities and powers and stuff like that, only have three fingers and a thumb. Well, I'm not going to count the thumb. Now, As far as extraterrestrials go, because the Na'vi are extraterrestrials compared to Earth, because, they're not living on Earth, ET also has the same 3 fingers, the same 3. Everyone looks at the one, and because the one lights up at the end, and they don't realize that he's got 3 fingers. Well, he's also a humanoid, a human-like creature. I've seen pictures from the medieval times of humans that have abnormally long necks, just like how he has. Like Mr. Fantastic from the Fantastic Four, how he can like stretch his neck and just sticks out and stuff. Look at these bulging eyes. See these huge bulging eyes? The Na'vi also have big bulging eyes. If you take a look, now we're starting to see even more similarities if we include modern pop culture. Huge bulging eyes, 3 fingers, alien-like, humanoid. Well, here is an example of an actual human hand that has 3 fingers. There was no, the pinky wasn't cut off. This person was born like this. I'm going to let that sink in for a moment. Now, let me share with you this book from antiquity. This book is an index of various esoteric hand signs. And you can see many of them over here, all the different hand signs, and it's written in Latin what they mean. But if you pay attention to this one in particular, you can see that they have the 3 fingers, the 2 fused in the middle, I'll say. And then the other one's almost even kind of bent in that unnatural position or whatever. And then there's some words up here. It says consciente or conscienter affermo. Conscienter affermo. What does that mean? Well, this is conscient, as in conscience or science or with knowledge, which means I have knowledge or knowingly. Affermo. I knowingly affirm. I approve. I verify. That's what this sign means in this book from antiquity that shares esoteric hand signs. It means I knowingly affirm. There's some other ones on here too. I don't know. Hold on. If you guys might want to see the other ones too. Nah, you could check it out. Here, I'll just go over them real quick. But there's all kinds of different hand signs over here, and they give the meaning of all of them. And this one is conscienter affermo. I verify. I knowingly verify on purpose. I concur. I can verify that a thing is true. That's what this literally means. Now here it is. If you want to see, I just looked it up here. Conscienter affermo. I knowingly affirm. This is the author of the book. This is the guy that wrote the book. He happens to be holding his hand. Out of all the hand signs he could have chosen, he chose that one in the exact way that it is written in that book. I knowingly affirm, especially when they put it like over their chest. This is like your heart chakra, right? He's saying, I can validate. I can affirm this. I have knowledge on something that other people do not. And I'm letting you people know who have the same knowledge that I'm there with you. Okay? It's acknowledgement. Now, here we have another noblewoman. Let's dive a little bit deeper, though, because it goes beyond the hand. And I'm going to explain to you, and it's going to make sense in about 10 minutes, why it's the hand of the devil. Let's check out this woman's hand, shall we? Now remember, if you're not looking for it, it will pass you by. If you're not paying attention, you will miss certain things. Here she's doing the same thing, no thumb. So the thumb isn't really important, right? It's this particular shape. Look at how she's bending those outer 2 fingers. That's insane. I can't even do that. Like, I got to force it. It's like they're broken. It's like she has a broken hand, right? These 2 are stuck together. These 2 look kind of broken, but they're not broken. It's just a natural pose for her. Now, here's another picture. She's holding her hand over her heart. But if we pay attention, and we're looking closely, some of you may have noticed she has an eye patch. Well, that's interesting. Now eyes are coming into play. Why would she have an eye patch? Well, I looked this up. I looked up this particular noblewoman, and nobody knows. Absolutely nobody, zero people understand why this famous woman from antiquity had an eye patch. A lot of people wonder, though. I wonder if it has something to do with what she's doing with her hand. Now this woman over here, let's see, does she have a hand thing or no? Well, I'll come back to her. She's this princess chick. Now here's another noble woman. She's doing the same hand sign, as you can see, right down there at the bottom. Boom. Okay. Here's another nobleman or woman. I don't know if that's a dude or a chick, but anyways, they're doing the same thing with the hand. Look at it. Check it out. Boom. 2 fingers separated. Here's this guy. Check out his hand. He's got his is a little bent. See how he's kind of bending it like it's a claw? You see that? There's some claw action going on. Okay? He's kind of bending it like it's a claw. Okay. I might be speculating. I might be reading into the clues. Here's a very famous one. Christopher Columbus, allegedly. I personally don't think that Christopher Columbus existed. And if there was a person named Christopher Columbus, I'm sure there was many people named that. But I see him more as an effigy or like a mascot for a certain organization, kind of like Washington or Alexander the Great. Anyways, here's Christopher Columbus doing the same thing. Now remember, you guys need to start paying attention because there's other clues I'm going to go back and show you. I don't know if I'm not looking at the chat right now, so I don't know if you guys have picked up on it. But let's finish out these ones. This guy right here, this nobleman, he's holding up his hands. This guy's doing it on the helmet right here. You see that? Wearing the knight's armor, which we've talked about. You know, the importance and the significance of wearing metal around your body during these particular times. Here's another guy holding his fingers between a book, and the hand on his waist is the one that's throwing the sign. Now, I told you earlier to follow the clues. Follow the clues. We need to follow the clues because there's more than just the hands at play here, right? Yes, the claw. M for Mason. I see that in the chat. Okay. Now, let's go back a little bit. I told you guys to pay attention. There's something you've missed. Let me show you. Actually, I'm going to go forward because I have zoomed in on the particular things that you have missed, and I'm going to show them to you now. Here are some of those pictures we just looked at. That's the guy who had his hand on his waist. Do you see anything strange aside from him having maggots in his hat? Take a look. Take a closer look. Look even closer. What is weird? What is different about this particular guy? You see that? Okay. Well, let's see if it's an anomaly or not. Here's the woman. Let's take a closer look, shall we? What is weird? What is strange and different? These are all the same people that were throwing up that hand sign earlier. The same pictures. What is weird about these people? Something's off with the eyes, isn't it? This one in particular, you start to notice there's bulging. There's like, it's almost like the eyes are like wanting to pop out of the head. Like I have to do that on purpose to even emulate it. Oh, that hurts my face doing that. Anyways, here's Christopher Columbus. Let's check him out. Look a little closer. What's going on? Do all of these people just have a lazy eye? All the ones that are making the claw symbol, the hand sign of the devil? Some of them don't have a lazy eye per se, but one eye that's lower than the other eye. Well, that's interesting too. They have some sort of genetic issue. that they are sharing. Their genetics are wrong. Something's wrong with their genetics. Okay, and let's step outside of, that's judgmental or whatever. Let's call a thing what it is. This dude's got a lazy eye. He's got a doing. His eye's going off in some other crazy direction. And they all are. Okay, some of them have lazy eyes. Some of them have an eye that's like way down here, like a droopy eye. Right? Here's that girl. Straight eye, lazy eye. All of them are starting to share these commonalities. Here's the other one I showed you earlier. Lazy eye, straight eye. Now, here is a picture that it's altogether different. This is a picture of a person from the late 18th century, early 19th century, a person who suffers from what is known as Apert's syndrome, A-P-E-R-T. Now, Apert's syndrome is sort of a catch-all syndrome that there are many people throughout the world who suffer from this. It is not a medical condition. It's not some kind of a sickness per se. It is a mutation. It is a mutation in the genetic code. And there are a great number of people around the world that have this, or some portion thereof of Apert syndrome. What it does is it does many things. It definitely gives most people the lazy eye. Okay, so we'll start there. That's easy to do. The eye that looks straight and the eye that is kind of doing off to the side. Okay, it also kind of squishes people's face in a little bit. And if I were to show you a profile, whereas my features kind of pop out, people that have Apert syndrome and other genetic defects or mutations, their faces tend to be squished inward. Okay, I can't do it, obviously, but you'll see. Now, the other thing about Apert syndrome, I'll show you here, is it's a genetic disorder characterized by the premature fusion of skull bones and the webbing of fingers and toes. Now it says, due to shallow eye sockets and muscle imbalances, individuals with Apert syndrome have a very high prevalence of eye misalignments and lazy eyes. It goes on to say, Apert syndrome is a genetic disorder. It is a mutation. Let me just stress that word. It is a mutation, not a genetic disorder. That's just PC. These are mutants. They are mutated, in which the fingers, face, toes, and feet are all typically mutated. Apert syndrome can be inherited from a parent who has it through a genetic mutation. Anybody that has Apert syndrome, even a little bit, takes a 50% risk that they will pass some portion of it on to their children. It's a guarantee, 50%. A child with Apert syndrome usually has brain plates that have fused together and cause pressure in the head, and also physical deformation of the head. Apert syndrome also shows in the fingers and the toes. Lastly, it says here, Apert syndrome is a rare genetic disorder that causes premature fusion of skull bones, preventing normal brain and skull growth. It's also characterized by severe webbing or fusion of the fingers and the toes. Let's go back a little bit and check that girl out, or that person. Okay, let's check out this person. Now, I will tell you this. I've found very few pictures of genetic disorders that are not going to be displeasing to look at. Okay, my eyes took in a lot of things that you guys, I know you're not going to want to look at. So I'm not going to share all kinds of crazy, too extreme cases, okay? But I will share these ones. Look at her hands. Do you see these hands? All of her fingers are fused, and her thumb is separate. All of the fingers over here are fused together, and the thumb is separate. You see, your DNA, your genes, have instructions inside of them. Your RNA has instructions that determine when to separate from the other ones so that you can have the appropriate amount of fingers and, functions and proportions and symmetry and stuff. Look at the toes. One divot right in the middle, and the other toes are fused with a big thumb toe right there. The hands remind me of the penguin character. I bet my brother already said that. He's in the chat. The penguin hands from Batman Returns, right? Which I think I brought this up when I decoded Batman Returns. But let's look at some more examples. And what does this have to do with this hand sign, the devil's hand sign, we'll say? Well, here's some more characteristics, not just Apert syndrome, but if it doesn't spread to the hands and feet, it's known as Crouzon syndrome. Like I said, it's all genetic mutations. It's all the same thing. It's the body not growing properly or correctly. So typically you'll have bulging eyes in many of these people. Their eyes will look like they're like trying to jump out of the sockets. Their eyes will be kind of bulging and like popping out almost. And then they'll have a droopy eye oftentimes. Like one eye will be lower than the other eyes. They'll have heads that are misshapen. Right? So here are some examples. I'll show you some of the ones that are, tolerable and not too strange to look at. But this is your typical profile. See how the eyes come very far out of the skull there? And then one of the eyes is drooping down further. You see the same types of things. Remember this because I'm going to show you monsters in antiquity and among other things that share these exact same traits. And I'm going to build the case that they are real, that these monsters from antiquity are actually real. And we see remnants, we find little clues that take us to the ancient world today as they are stuck in our genetics and they pop up from time to time. There are so many people, and this is a fictional character, but he's a likeness of somebody that would have Apert's syndrome, or some other similar genetic mutation where the head is misshapen, the eye is drooping down, it's affecting his speech and his brain and stuff. He doesn't have all of his teeth and everything. Sloth from Goonies is a perfect example, okay? Now, there are so many people that have Apert syndrome alone, you could fill the entire city of Eugene, Oregon with all of these people. An entire city. It's over 170,000 people according to the odds and according to the numbers. That's a whole city of people that have genetic mutations that could be filled up. That's an entire tribe. So think about this. I know it's kind of funny, okay? Sort of. I think it's kind of funny, the picture. But if you think about this, in antiquity, we had explorers that went off and had travelogues, and they encountered this time and time again. They encountered an entire nation of mutants, different types of mutations from place to place. So it's no longer really funny when you actually get to a place where everybody looks like that. Everybody shares the exact same genetic mutations. Sloth also gives us more context for the deeper meaning behind the devil's claw, because he's wearing the Superman shirt. He is seen in the movies as a hero, as a superhero, actually. He literally has, I can't say it because it's not PC, but he has a certain kind of strength, okay? He has serious strength that only certain types of genetic mutations tend to acquire, okay? They have very strong. Their muscular structure is just off the charts at times. But it's nothing today like it used to be during the Dark Ages. It's nothing today like it used to be during the time of ancient Greece, whenever we had mutations that people would call different things, monsters and chimera and stuff like that. And keep in mind, genetic mutations are not limited to humans. I'm just focusing on the humans. This is known as the Toxic Avenger. He is also a superhero from when I was a kid, okay? And he is known to be a mutant. He is a mutation. Now, Sloth, they don't explain why he looks like that, except for they suggest he was dropped when he was a child. I very much doubt being dropped when you were a child makes you look like that. Okay, that's a genetic mutation. So is this. And this guy in the shows and comic books and stuff, he's the Toxic Avenger, and he's literally like toxic. He got this way from radiation. Radiation is what gives many superheroes their superpowers. We don't see them looking like this quite often because it's not, it's not socially acceptable. We want like a chiseled, good-looking Superman-looking superhero. But in reality, in antiquity, many of the quote-unquote superheroes didn't really look as beautiful as our standard of beauty holds today. They looked gruesome. They looked demonic. They looked, dare I say, devilish. Now, here's an X-ray. You can see that people that have Apert's disease and similar mutations oftentimes will have their two middle fingers fused together. The skin is actually fused together. The bones are still separate on the inside. And genetic mutations can happen quickly over a short period of time. I don't believe in millions and millions of years. I don't believe that everything changes over billions of years and stuff. I believe in an apocalyptic cycle and a cataclysm that changes things like that. It will change the geography. It will change the animals. It will change the people. And everything that you thought was fiction and science fiction and basically lies will come true. As this world, the modern world, will be thrown into antiquity. Our world will become the stuff of stories and nightmares, and this becomes the new normal. Now, you can see here that we've got a hand on one side, right? And we've got feet as well. These are feet down here. The same thing applies to the feet. Sometimes it's called lobster disease, lobster claw hands, stuff like that. People describe it in different ways, but there's different versions where it's simple, where you can kind of have like a little bit of a separation at the top, and then complex where it's completely separated, and then complicated where it's actually starting to fuse the other fingers together as well. Now, if it continues, okay, if it continues, and I've talked about this many times, humans are not stagnant. We don't just stay looking the way that we look today. I'm using myself as an example, okay? Because I don't have any like genetic mutations that I'm aware of or anything. But my looks could completely change very quickly through the conditions in my surroundings changing very quickly. So for example, radiation, me being exposed to radiation not only can change or mutate my genes, it can also mutate my sperm, and it can change my children, and I can make offspring that will be a tribe of mutations. We have these today. Now, here's the devil horns, right? All the devil horns is somebody that has their two middle fingers fused together, and they're grabbing them and putting them down. That's all it is. That's why they're doing that. They're putting their only middle finger that they have, and they're putting it down. Oftentimes people see this as like horns. This is Eminem, right? And they call this the devil's horns. Well, there's a reason for that, because this hand sign is associated with the devil. It's associated with many devils that used to exist in antiquity. There is not one devil. In antiquity, they didn't consider there to be like one main antagonist devil. There were many devils, and some of them in antiquity were seen as good, as superheroes. They had, what did they call them? Demons. Okay, in antiquity, and I'm only talking about antiquity. In antiquity, hundreds and hundreds of years ago, okay, even thousands of years ago, a demon was not some evil spirit that was out to get you or possess you or whatever. A demon was seen as like a guardian angel. I'm just using a word that would correspond from today's, vocabulary. A demon in antiquity is seen as a guardian angel or a spirit that could inspire someone either to do something good or to do something bad. Okay, so when you watch cartoons and you have like a little angel and a devil pop up, those would be demons, both of them. Okay, if you look at things from an ancient perspective. Now, Spider-Man over here, right? He's holding his thumb out or whatever. He needs to press a button. That's why he does it. Okay. Spider-Man doesn't naturally just shoot webs out of his body or whatever. Technically, he's created something that shoots webbing out. His ability is different. He sticks to walls and stuff. But if he does that, he needs to like press it down hard, right? He should just go like that. Okay. He should just put all the fingers down and go like that. But they don't want him to do that because they need to associate the superhero with the devil. And I'm not talking about like the Christian devil. Okay. I'm talking about the ancient devils of old. And I'll show you some examples of the ancient devils of old or the ancient demons. And what I'm really talking about is humanoid mutants that live in the underworld, that live under our feet right now by the hundreds of thousands. Entire tribes of mutated, gigantic, huge people that live under our feet. And they're not going to tell you about it. Here is a statue from long before any rocker was throwing devil horns or this was considered to be satanic. This statue is the founder of Tibetan Buddhism. Okay? This is a very old hand sign that goes all the way back. Buddhism, here's the founder of Taoism. You can see he's also doing the same hand sign or whatever, like just like that. Okay? He's doing the devil horns, the devil hand sign. So it was not always seen as some, you're worshiping Satan himself or whatever. Okay. Now here's more examples. I want to show you what happens and why some people were considered to be cursed and some people were considered to be blessed. Some people who had certain genetic mutations that affected and caused the fingers to fuse together and the toes and the feet and sometimes the legs and arms and all kinds of weird stuff to fuse together or unnaturally separate as well. Okay. I want to show you how sometimes it was seen as a curse and other times it was seen as you're a superhero and you can save the day and you're a good guy. Okay. So this is what it looks like whenever your fingers are fused together, the middle three of them right here. Now, if this person puts their middle three or their middle finger down, what are they doing now? Right? All these hand signs are here for a certain reason. Okay? They're just putting the middle finger down. The middle ones down. Right? That's all they're doing. Now, these can fuse even further. Have you ever heard of therianthropy? Therianthropy is when a human, according to tradition, changes into an animal, as is talked about in ancient Greece and in myths and legends and stuff. When humans actually turned into animals in antiquity, what could cause a person to turn into an animal? Watch this. The fingers start to fuse together. Okay? They become very pudgy and sticking together. And then lastly, the thumb itself will merge. Okay? And that oftentimes this happens at a very young age. That's why I can't show you pictures of too many of these people because they've become children. All right. So as you're a baby, people with severe instances of this, look at that bottom hand. Okay. This is less severe, more severe, and the most severe. When your hands and your fingers start to become little nubs. Here's another example. Here are the fingers, little tiny short stubby fingers, by the way. I'll come back to that. And then when they're completely fused, they become little nubs like that. Here it is again, little tiny hand. Okay. And then the nubs all fused together, getting smaller and smaller to where almost like, like your fingers are like that. And here it is again. They call this dorsal. Palmar and then dorsal is when they're completely fused together. Here's some more examples, right? The hand just getting tinier and tinier, nubbier and nubbier until basically it looks like this and your fingertips are all fused together and your fingernails would be fused together at the tip. And then if you were to, if a person's arm were to be used to study or something, I imagine it would look something like this. And here's another example of what it would look like in a laboratory, I'm going to say, okay? And here's an example of what it would look like if you threw in some carrots and some parsley and some seasonings and some herbs and spices. This is a pig's foot. This is a pig's foot. Let me go back. This is a human hand that is fused together, mutated. And this is under today's conditions. Please keep that in mind. Imagine what it's like under an electrically amplified atmosphere whenever you're living a bit too close to radioactive energy that's flying off from synchrotron radiation near the center of the world at the Garden of Eden, and you live just outside of it, and all of your people are mutating and starting to change. Pig people, right? Their hands start to look like that. Their feet are even separated. And I've done a video. I can explain this too. This is more like an orc. Okay, we're getting into the realm of Dungeons and Dragons and science fiction. And so I might lose some of you right here. But for those of you who stay, I'm going to make a lot of connections. All right. And they're going to make sense. Horns, I will come back to. The pig nose, I've discussed already in a prior video where I talked about how the nose falls off because of radiation, that the lips and the nose, they start to fall off if you're exposed to radiation. Now, you won't get radiation sickness and die if you live in an electrically amplified environment that's constantly providing cellular regeneration. But the radiation will still be fighting, and your parts that are susceptible, like the tip of your nose and your lips and stuff like that, they can degrade. If they're degrading at a faster rate than cellular regeneration can keep up with, you're going to have a pig person who has like no nose and has little tiny hands that are all fused together and stuff like that. And feet. I'll get back to the feet. Now, this right here is an actor. He's in some of my favorite horror movies, especially from the 80s and the 90s, 70s even, that era. He has a genetic condition. That's why he's playing this role. He's almost always plays a mutant, an actual mutant. You may recognize him from Weird Science. Okay, he was one of the biker mutants at the end of the movie in Weird Science. Okay, but he has an actual. Look how long the cranium is on this dude. Look at the pointy ears. Okay. This is a fictional version of the reality. These people exist, people with genetic mutations. Sometimes they can get along. Sometimes they don't need help. Sometimes they don't die. Sometimes they live for a very long time. Great. This guy has a genetic mutation where he cannot sweat. He can't. His body can't sweat. So he's susceptible to overheating. And so, when he goes out and does things like the hills have eyes and stuff and hot, dry regions, he has to like spray himself off and stuff. Pigs also don't have sweat glands. Did you know? Pigs don't have sweat glands. So they have to roll around in the mud and prevent sunburns. Mud people, if this was a human who had this condition exactly like this guy does, he would have to, if it was the post-apocalyptic world and he's just roaming about from place to place, he would have to put mud on his face to keep cool because he has that condition. It's a mutation. He is a mutant. He doesn't just play a mutant. He has a genetic mutation. Now, as far as hand signs go, here's another one. I showed you at the beginning, some people were sort of putting their two fingers together. Sometimes you don't know because they're holding two of them up and they're pointing or they're holding it up into the sky or whatever. But that's just two fingers that have been fused. I can't do it with the other way around, but something like that, I guess. But it's easier to put these ones down, right? So these two fingers are fused, and they're showing you their hands. They're showing you who they worship. They're showing you who they serve, or they're showing you their genetic bloodline of where they hearken from, where they come from. This is Spock, a fictional character, but fiction oftentimes mirrors back to us our actual reality, and that's why we find it so interesting. Here is a secret handshake of Freemasonry. It's called the lion's paw. Now, the lion's paw is also known as the devil's paw or the devil's claw, which I'll show you that in a minute here. But here we have somebody who is a humanoid that looks like a lion in the face. They had facial features. Now, they're cartoonified here, and they've actually drawn a lion's head. That happens often. Don't let that trick you. That's a human that has some kind of genetic mutation to make them look like a lion. They are very hairy as well. And their hands look like this. So when they shake hands, they do that. Let's look at some more examples. This is the actual genetic mutation of people who have fingers that are fused together. These two are fused, these two are fused. And they go, this cleft goes way down. All right. They look like they have alien hands or lobster hands. Okay. Lobster claws. This is somebody's hands. And they're born with these types of hands. And this is not rare. I mean, it's rare compared to the rest of the population, but this isn't like only 2 people on Earth. No, like I said, this happens to a city full of people. This is an entire family right here that has lobster claw hands. Look at these hands. Split right down the middle. If they were to wave at you, they would do that. With or without the thumb. Okay? Why? Because they have mutations. This is how they were seen in antiquity. They were people would give them animal hooves. They would give them cloven feet. Right? These underworld, oftentimes they came from the underworld. They lived in cave systems, which is huge, or near what I call in my new book, Ancient Oblivion, Return to Hyperborea, I call these places of power. These places where these creatures lived. They lived near to these places of power, and by power, I mean radioactivity. I mean huge amounts of earthly plasmas that were throwing off radiation in certain places. And so the people that lived outside of those places were susceptible to that radiation, but they didn't die. They didn't get radiation sickness, like I said earlier. They lived on. They were healthy. They were able to get about in the world, but they just were considered to be otherworldly, alien, mutants. This is Spock. Now it's starting to show you here. I wanted to point out that he used to have a hairy chest. All right, Spock is actually a hairy dude. If you are a fan of Star Trek and you watch the old Spock had a freaking goatee. He took off his shirt quite often, and he had a big old hairy chest and stuff. He's a Vulcan. I'm gonna get back to him being hairy in a moment, okay? But he's a Vulcan in the show. From the planet Vulcan or whatever, but there is no planet Vulcan. It's the god Vulcan, which is here on Earth, which is an actual god in antiquity. Vulcan, or Balkan, the volcano god, the fire god, the god who is associated with openings in the earth from inside the earth to the surface world, just like the volcanoes. Okay? This is Vulcan, Roman god of fire, volcanoes, and blacksmiths. He is associated, or Vulcan, the planet, the place, Vulcan, is an inner world association. These Vulcans, originally, in the original Star Trek, they grew hair. We're just used to seeing them look like elves and stuff because that's how it changed over time. But originally, this is actually Spock, and here's Spock again in the original Star Trek. Very hairy. Compared to Captain Kirk over there, these represent 2 different species, one that is from above ground and one that is from below ground. He lives for a very long time. That's why his ears keep growing. The nose and the ears just grow and grow and grow. They don't stop after puberty. They don't stop after death. So he has pointy, long, elven ears. He starts to get very hairy in his chest and stuff too. He is Vulcan. He lives a very long time, and he prospers because of it. Just living for hundreds and hundreds of extra years will make you more prosperous from the experience that you get. So they hold up their split, genetically altered or mutated hands, and they say, live long and prosper. This is their way of saying hi. Okay? They're just natural. There's going to be a natural split, just like I have natural splits in mind if I hold up my hand normally. I don't just go like that when I say hi, okay, to people. I just casually hold it up. Hey, but if they only have these fingers, they're going to say, hey, live long and prosper. Hi, life to you, strength to you. This is also him with hair on his face. These people, the underworld people, are hairy. They tend to be, according to tradition and antiquity, they're hairy people. This is another Vulcan, and people associate them with being very clean shaven and looking like space elves, but they're not. That's just a certain portion of them that are being shown to us, which are the younger ones that haven't gone through puberty yet, or they have cleaned up, they've shaven and stuff like that. Now, let's go back to the ancient world, because there is a connection to be made between Vulcans, underworld, hairy creatures, hairy beings that live long and prosper, and cannibals. Listen to the word. Vulcan, Cannibal. And I'm saying Val because it's actually Val, but over time it became Baal. Vulcan or Bahal Khan means the priest of Baal, or Baal's priest, Baal's priest. Some people use that ancient Canaanite deity, and it's Baal. Some people will say Baal, some people will say Baal, or I say Bahal. Okay? But it is the priest of Baal. Khan means priest or speaker for. Bahal, Cannibal, the speakers of Baal or Baal. Now, Baal was this ancient bull god because there was this antler shape in the sky, this crescent object that was up there in antiquity that I talk about quite often whenever I'm talking about the plasma apocalypse and our alternative cosmological world, or my alternative cosmological view that I have, okay? These people lived in proximity to that. They lived directly underneath and they worshipped that particular god. Baal, Bahal, Shin. They lived in the land of Shinar or Shin-Or, etc. They're all the same, but they were cannibals. That's my point. They were hairy, wild men and women who ate other human beings or humanoids. Here is an example, a drawing, right? Now here we have these, take a look at them. There's body parts on the grill, okay? But look at these cannibals. Look at their faces. Do you see that they are losing their hair? One. And two, they have little tiny faces compared to the rest of their head, which is very large. Two, they all look exactly like each other. Three, and some of them are very hairy. Four, let's look at the guy that does not fit in. This guy right here. He's pointing up at the sky. This is also another, this is also a little clue that's given to us. But look at his other hand. What's he doing? Two middle fingers fused together. The devil's claw, the devil's hand. The cannibals, underworld, hairy beings. There used to be another mutant tribe that was also from the underworld. They emerged up here on the surface. They lived in a particular land, in a particular place, and they were known as the Cynocephali, or commonly the dog-headed tribe. They were hairy, humanoid, dog-looking people. They were also, according to legend, cannibals. Or, I mean, listen, they're obviously not dog-headed aliens or actual part dog, part humans, or they wouldn't be considered to be cannibals. We don't consider lions to be cannibals, but a man who looks like a lion is a cannibal, just like a man who looks like a pig or a dog. People would interpret these faces in different ways. Sometimes lions, because they had a protruding mouth. That's why I can't do it, but some people have like a top part of their jaw and a bottom part that will stick out more. And whenever you take that to an extreme degree, you look like that. Dog-headed people, lion-faced, cat-faced people, pig-faced people, etc. Okay? Here they are again. And then I wanted to point this out because you can see this guy is kind of hairy. He's not wearing a costume because you can see that's his butt crack right there. Okay, so he's got a hairy body. And he's got like paint all over his body or something, but he's just very hairy all over the place. These people, I talk about the hairy tribe versus the smooth-skinned tribe in my second book, Return to Hyperborea. I think it's like the second or third chapter in. But I talk about the Azir and the Vanir, the beautiful race and the ugly race. Well, this is what we're seeing depictions of. And here we have, again, the hairy guy who is about to club this other dude over the head. He's got this club and he's about to take a whack at this guy. The hairy race, the wild people. Now pay attention to this one. They're showing the cannibals and the hairy people being attacked by actual devils. Let's see what these devils look like. So this cannibalistic tribe was speaking to the explorers over here and telling them, you know, this is how we live or whatever. And they were being attacked actively by devils who have this weird weapon that looks like a bush leaf or something. I think there's something more to that, but let's check out the devil who's up here. Now, this is getting closer to our common depiction of the devil. Red skin, horns, a big long tail, even has a little pointy end to it. This is getting closer to our modern day depiction of a cartoon devil. Not what devils originally looked like, though. Now look at the feet on this devil. This devil has bird feet. 3 long, huge toes, just like that. And then a heel that goes backwards. So this is like the foot of a bird. Okay? If I were to do that, that's the foot of a bird. If my foot looked like that, I would look like I had the foot of a bird. Well, here is a particular devil in antiquity named Pazuzu. Now, this is just a cartoon version of Pazuzu, but I chose it so that you can see the feet clearly. That he has what look like bird feet, claws, a bird claw, or the devil's claw. This is a devil. Now, I will also say this in Pazuzu's defense, even though he looks satanic as fudge and super evil, in antiquity, in ancient Mesopotamia, Pazuzu was not considered to be an evil entity at all. And it's not because those were all pagan, evil people that weren't Christians and they just hated everybody and, you know, they were bad people. They were normal people like me and you. They believed Pazuzu, just like Saint Christopher, who is also a dog-headed humanoid in Catholicism. Pazuzu was a good guy. Pazuzu protected people from and against evil spirits. Who or what is Pazuzu? This shape might look familiar to you, by the way, because this is the statue that is seen in The Exorcist at the beginning. The statue that they imply possesses the little girl. Okay? It's interesting how they twist things around. Who or what is Pazuzu? Pazuzu is a demon. Remember, in antiquity, demon did not mean evil. It took on that meaning in the modern world. Pazuzu is a demon from Mesopotamian mythology with a terrifying look, a canine face, dog-headed, bulging eyes. Okay? Those eyes are bulging, exactly how I pointed out earlier. You'll have to excuse, I can't help what I'm zooming into there. The eyes are bulging on Pazuzu, just like that, just like those people that I showed you with Apert syndrome. So he has a dog face, he's got bulging eyes, bird-like talons, okay? This represents, although parts of it may be cartoonified and embellished, it represents an actual real human being that is a mutant, that is from the underworld, that lives in hell, which is underground, okay? In Tartarus, in hell, in Sheol, in the underworld. Whatever name you want to slap on it, hell and the underworld didn't always used to be seen as an evil place where evil spirits get sucked down into, believe it or not. A lot of that is just Christian cartoonification in the modern times because people don't get taught the origins of these things. This right here is a human being that has grown horns, which I will show you humans grow horns. Let a human live for hundreds of years. I guarantee you they're going to start growing horns. Okay? I will show you that humans do, and right now, grow horns. And can grow horns. But it is the split hoof I wanted to point out in this particular image. Okay? The split foot of the devil. The split hoof of the goat god. The one who is shaggy and hairy as the wild men and wild women were in antiquity. They were just gigantic, huge, hairy humans that lived in the underworld. And when they were old, their ears, like I said on Spock on the Vulcans, their ears just keep growing. Their noses tend to get longer. They get a little uglier as they get older, okay? Comparatively speaking. They also grow horns. This is what their feet would look like if they had the same type of affliction or genetic mutation. They have the devil's hand, the claw, the fused together fingers, and the devil's feet, which are hoof-like, which are bird-like. Okay? Here is what a person with Apert syndromes, this is what their foot looks like. They literally have 2 toes right there at the edge because it's not split all the way down. It's just split at the top. This is a genetic mutation with 2 toes. It looks just like a bird's foot, you could say. It looks like some people call it lobster foot or lobster hands or whatever. But this is spun to us in the form of fiction as if it doesn't exist. It does exist, and it exists in mass deep in the earth in particular regions. Not all the places inside of the earth are radioactive. Not all of the places inside of the earth are going to make you look like some thing out of a movie, okay? But there are places inside of the earth that definitely will. And this passes on to us in the form of fiction and science fiction and even cartoons. This is the foot of one of the teenage mutant ninja turtles. Teenage human beings. Not cartoons that are just made up. It's the story that is real, and it's being cartoonified, it's being embellished, but it's actually based off of reality. Whether or not Peter Laird and Kevin Eastman, the creators of that particular comic book, know it, doesn't matter if they know it. They have tapped into some kind of a truth if they do not know it. And all of these truths tend to come to people who are creative thinkers, have open minds. They tap into these types of truths. Let me use the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles as evidence. We have the 3 fingers. Okay, each Ninja Turtle only has 3 fingers, or you could do it like that. Okay, either way, that's all they have is the 3 fingers. They also have bulging eyes. They also have the split hoof or the devil's foot. But what about their backs? What about the shell? Was that just tossed on there because it makes them look more like turtles because they're supposed to be turtles? No, it was a human being that looked just like a freaking giant walking, talking turtle. They exist today. It is a genetic mutation. It's very similar to like having a mole, like a small mole or something. As a matter of fact, I think I have the name of it pulled up here. I do not. I got rid of it. But this is a genetic mutation. All right. This particular person has it all on his back, and he's not the only one. I didn't pull up all the pictures of all the people, okay? Because like I said, I'm taking it easy on everybody. I want my videos to be watchable because genetic mutations can gross some people out. They have to be pretty extreme to gross me out, and I've seen some stuff, man. Okay? But this is the back. They literally call this the Turtle Kid. There was a news story done about him and a different one. This news story right here, this isn't even about this kid. This is about a totally different kid. About a boy with a shell on his back nicknamed Little Ninja Turtle. A different kid that looks just like this, but he's younger, and I don't want to show you his face or anything like that, okay? But it's a genetic mutation. This is the cartoon version. The skin can also change color. There's a story of little children that came up out of the earth with green skin. There have been people with green skin who are said to come up from within the earth somewhere. Near, allegedly, the Garden of Eden. They're wearing masks because a lot of these people would wear masks. If they came up into the modern world, like Jason Voorhees, his face looks just like Sloth. Okay? He puts a mask on. Like Nightmare on Elm Street, or not that one. Friday the 13th, Jason Voorhees goes straight to the putting something over his face. And these people do too, because he's coming up into a world where that's not normal. And they're seen as freaks. They're seen as people in a sideshow. They're seen as misfits and weirdos and strange looking people and stuff. This right here is another character from the Ninja Turtles called a foot soldier. Well, let's look at his foot. I wonder why he's called a foot soldier. Boom. The toe. He's got a split hoof toe. Now, there are feet, there are shoes that are like this. But why? Where does that come from? Like the sandal going around the big toe makes sense, but the toes being split right there in the middle, that doesn't really make sense to me, unless, of course, you actually have a foot that necessitates a shoe that looks like that. These are just more examples, okay? They're called the Foot Clan, a whole clan of people with a foot problem, a split foot problem, the devil's foot. The old cartoon, they don't even look human. It looks like if you take off that mask, you're going to see some grotesque, mutated looking stuff, okay? You can imagine what's underneath the mask there. In the movies, they make them look more human, but in the cartoon, you know something nasty is underneath that mask. The Foot Clan. There's actually a Foot Clan of people that have a big, huge split bird foot. They call it ostrich-footed in Zimbabwe. It's called the Vadoma tribe, and there are hundreds of them. They just pass on the genetic mutation from child to child to child. Hundreds of people, thousands of people that have some form of this, just not as severe, but hundreds of them in Zimbabwe. You can look this up. They're called the Ostrich Foot Tribe or the Foot Clan. People have feet that look like this. 2 big old toes, and that's it. This reminds me in Japanese folklore of certain demons or devils called the Oni. We have the Oni, which are an offshoot of a bigger family of genetic mutants called the yokai. The Oni are the ones that look like your typical traditional devils. Red skin, split hoof feet, horns on top. Let me show you his face here. They have a horn on the top. Notice how he's like missing a lot of his hair on the top, just like those cannibals I showed you earlier, right? He's got this weird sort of cat-looking face or whatever. This is a devil in Japan. Now it's cartoonified. It's even hard to look at a little bit. Some of you who are not used to looking at this type of artwork, but let's zoom in on it and you can see some of the features a little more clearly. We see that there's something wrong. He's got these big, bulging freaking eyes. Eyes that look like they're popping out of his head. That is a symptom of genetic mutation. He's got horns. I'm going to get to the horns in a minute. His face in the middle is kind of like pushed in. Remember I showed you the Apert syndrome person that had the profile and the middle of their face was kind of sucked in? Let's look down at his feet though. Check this out. Does he have the split feet? He's got 3 fingers. Okay. 3 fingers. 2 toes. Boom. Bird toe. Right? And they would often give these people bird feet. And we just, exemplify it. Here's actual people, or would look more like human beings, but they're not. They're Oni. Look, she's got, or I don't know if it's a girl, but she's got horns, huge mouth, something going on with the head, horns over here. Look at the hands. Ah, do you see? The 2 fingers in the middle fused together. Only 3 fingers. This one's kind of putting hers like, remember how I said, like, if you put it down like that, that's what she's doing. The people with the genetic mutations and genetic markers. 3 toes going on down there. Here they are again. You can see their fingers, 3 fingers on each one. They look more like humans, more like would be like a black person or, brown skinned person. This would be like the Caucasian version. Here's a green dude. This person in the background, they're terrified. Look inside this house. They're like, oh crap, what's going on out there? The yokai. The yokai are just genetic mutations. They're not limited to human genetic mutations. There's also animals and insectoids and stuff, because down inside the earth, things grow to gigantic heights and sizes. Okay, because there's way more oxygen way down inside of the earth. And pretty soon that oxygen will be released through atmospheric depressurization. Whenever the electromagnetic field goes into flux and it lets go completely, all that oxygen will come up here to our world. Guess what we're going to see? Guess what we're going to experience? Guess what some people are going to change into? These are all mutations. The skin can become very stretchy if it's exposed under the right conditions to certain electromagnetic fields. It can start producing too much elastin. The collagen goes into overdrive, and the elastin, which is the thing that makes your skin snap back, it doesn't, it just keeps stretching. And then you have cellular regeneration on top of that, and you're healthy. You're perfectly healthy, but you can stretch and you can bend in all kinds of crazy ways and stuff. And it's not just the yokai that shows this. They show this in medieval Europe as well. Stretchy people. But all these different mutants, mutations, monsters, animals, things with telepathy, things that seem just monstrous and scary to maybe some of us in the modern world, these were called the yokai. They were typically things that came up from the underworld. Like you see this gigantic spider right here? That's a big old spider. That's a giant insect that crawled up from the underworld. And there are giant insects that live down there. Now let's get back to the devil. Okay, so this is the Oni. This is the typical traditional devil look, right? You can see they're hairy. Originally, devils were hairy. They weren't all smooth skin and beautiful and stuff. That's an elven standard of beauty. That's a young creature that hasn't gone through puberty and stuff yet. But there are places on Earth, and like I said, I talk about this in my second book, where people are born with an excess of hair all over their bodies. And they usually have an abundance of testosterone. So if they're male, they're invigorated sexually. I don't know how else to say that, but they will be hairy. They will grow horns. They will be a different color. Their skin will be a different color. They are cannibalistic. They will eat people. I'm sure they will eat the easiest people they can get a hold of, which oftentimes are elderly people and children, just like animals in Africa. They look for the weakest ones to cull from the herd. But in ancient times, the devils were not only mutants that had, fused skin and stuff like that, but they were very hairy people. And they had tails. Humans had tails. Humans can grow horns. There are places where humans grow hair all over their face, all over their body, not just people with hairy backs. I mean everywhere, all over the place. These were called the wild men. They're genetic mutations, and they're usually giants. They live in the earth. They come from inside of the earth. They will occasionally wander up to the surface nowadays, but in antiquity, they lived on the surface. Some of them came up here and they lived in whole communities, whole nations. And there are stories from antiquity. The one of Alexander the Great having fought a whole tribe of these comes to mind. And it's said that he buried them under a mountain and sealed them off with metal. And he called them Gog and Magog. These are what you can expect to return to the surface world one day. This is also where you get the origin of Krampus, who is typically covered in this dark black hair. Look at his feet. He's going to snatch up the kids. Look, he's got one human foot with real long fingernails and stuff. They don't clip their fingernails. And one hooved foot. That's the true Krampus right there. That's really what sets apart Krampus from a satyr, like a regular satyr. But this is also known as a satyr. This is a human that grew a tail. You have a tailbone, right? That means you can grow a tail. Humans have a tailbone because humans used to have tails. And it's not because you were a monkey. Don't even go there. Some humans, just like some humans mutated into pigs, which I showed you earlier, some humans mutated into monkeys. They were seen as being a cursed tribe of humans. Not the other way around. They're in the Bible. In the Bible, satyrs are mentioned by name, depending on your Bible. But in Hebrew, they're called the Sa'irim, or the Sairim, 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 Sire. The im is just plural. It just means many. This is the word sire. This is why kings and queens are usually kings that have big pointy crowns on their heads, and they are nobles and of noble birth, usually implying they live in places of power or they live for a very long time until modern humans just inherited those titles, but they were called sire. That's why people say, yes, sire. Sometimes they would be called shar or princes, etc. But it's the sirim, the sairim, or the sairim, the goat-headed humans. Humans that had furry faces and horns and split-hooven feet and walked around, and they were very tall. They were satyrs. This is what Saturday is named after, or Saturday is named after the day, a whole day that commemorates an entire tribe or race of genetic mutations. The Sarim. This is what they're called in Hebrew in the Bible. Some Bibles, like the KJV, I believe even comes out sometimes in some verses and says, satyrs. Do not worship these people. Do not worship the goat-headed people. Do not give offerings to the goat-headed people. Oftentimes, they lived outside of the camp of the saints, outside of the Garden of Eden. Why? Because the Garden of Eden has this electromagnetic radiation dome that protects it, and it's spinning around and throwing off radiation to all of those who live outside of it, causing genetic mutations. Here's what it looks like in the Bible, the actual word, if you look it up in the concordance. Sair. This is very close to the word satyr, just it has no T. Sair, sire. Goat, hairy goat, he-goat. Here's the Hebrew. Sair, devil. Goat, hairy, kid, rough, satyr, which is where we get Satan. Very similar, right? Devils. Shaggy, by analogy, a faun. A faun. Faun. Goat people. Because the Hebrew word for serim means hairy or shaggy, the exact translation varies across different Bibles. But as you can see in the King James Version, it translates them as satyrs in the book of Isaiah, acknowledging that the Bible, at the very least, says these are not mythical creatures that don't exist, but they are real creatures that do and did exist at the time. And the Bible is telling you, don't be like them. Don't worship in the way they worship. Don't eat other humans the way that they do, etc., and so on and so forth. Don't worship false idols in the same manner that they do. They were considered to be goat demons with claw, hooves, and hands, fused together, cursed people. In the Systeine Chapel, known for that painting where God is reaching out to Adam and he's like barely putting any effort into touching his finger, there are many paintings. There is an effigy of Jesus on the cross at the very end of the Systeine Chapel, and right behind it is this image. I don't know if I got it perfectly, but you can see there are hairy people in a cave. This is the painting. This is the statue of Jesus. This is Jesus's feet right there with the nail. Right behind him, you can see there is a cave, and standing in the cave are these weird, hairy, Bigfoot-looking creatures. Wild men that live underground. Sasquatch. I found this picture I thought was pretty cool because it gives you the 5 types. Somebody thinks that these are the 5 types of Sasquatch, and they name them Raphaim, Anakim, Zamzumim, which is taken directly, the Imim and the Zamzumim, these two are taken directly from the book of Joshua, which is not considered a part of the Bible, but it fills in all the blanks that the Bible leaves out, okay? And there's a story in there where these creatures right here, these two, the Imim and the Zamzumim, came and kidnapped or hit this dude with their tail and then kidnapped his donkeys. They took all this guy's donkeys and went across the lake or whatever, and like these monstrous hairy creatures They were said to look like a bear from the waist up, a human from the waist down, and they had tails. This is also harkens to the sacrificial goat. Now, my question is, was it really a goat? If there were goat people, did they really sacrifice a goat? Or was it a satyr that they were sacrificing, that they were trying to cleanse and putting all of their sins onto, so that he would collect all of their sins? Maybe it's DNA. Maybe it's sinful, evil, corrupt, broken DNA, and they're transferring it onto some other creature. I don't know. But Azazel, the goat-headed god, the horned god, the leader of the 19 fallen angels, is Bigfoot a demon? Some people wonder what Bigfoot is. I've shown you what Bigfoot is. Bigfoot is not an alien from outer space or whatever. There may be Bigfoots on other planets or other worlds or whatever, but Bigfoot is an inner terrestrial, not an extra or outer terrestrial, but an inner terrestrial. Bigfoot comes from the earth. Bigfoot is a wild man and a wild woman. They don't speak English. They use telepathy because they live in places of power. They live in places where their energy is amplified by the energy that is amplified within the earth. And sometimes they wander up to the surface and people see them or whatever. Now we have back to Apert syndrome and the devil's claw. We have some people that are born with tiny little stubby fingers, okay? And in pictures and portraits and paintings, instead of doing this with the long fingers or doing this with the long fingers and showing the devil's hand, they will do what they call the devil's claw or the devil's paw. And they will pose just like this, making these knuckles, just like you see here, and they'll put it in the same place where they would have put it if they had done some other pose. The devil's claw, genetic mutation. This guy happens to be a prominent preacher within Christianity, by the way. But you can see it in different portraits and pictures over time, people posing using the devil's claw. Or sometimes it's called the lion's paw, because these people had faces that looked like cats. It could be interpreted as a very hairy-faced cat person or dog person or bear or some furry animal of some kind. I'll come back to the hairy people, okay? But here is the sign of the devil's claw. You just do like that, and you just put it over here somewhere on your body, okay? Here, back to the Ninja Turtles once again, okay? Clearly, they're humans that were severely mutated. Goes back to the yokai of ancient Japan. This is one of the yokai called the kappa, which is just a mutated human being. In Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Part 3, the live-action movie, they travel back in time to ancient Japan, and one person actually calls them kappa. They think that they're these. They think the Ninja Turtles are these because they are these. That's what they are. The Ninja Turtles are just a prettier version of the ancient yokai called the kappa. This is a human being that was said to frequent watery areas. You would imagine that creatures like this who have their hands and feet fused, toes and stuff fused with webbed fingers and stuff, are pretty good at swimming, right? More adept in the water. Well, these guys that had the mutated backs, webbed fingers, etc., also had a divot in the top of their head. They were said to be not too smart. And if you offer them or make an offering to them to give them food, people that probably have a tough time hunting and cooking or farming or things like that because, you know, their brain's kind of messed up. If you give them food, you come by with a Snicker bar or a Baby Ruth, we'll say, and you offer it to them, you just made a friend. If you don't give them anything, they're going to ask you. And when you refuse them and you get all scared and you look at them like they're monstrous, weird creatures, they're probably going to get pissed off and grab you and freak out and start doing things. But they have this divot in their head and they have a protruding mouth. Sometimes it's drawn and cartoonified as a beak. But they have bulging eyes, again, and a divot in their head. The divot in the head actually is something that you're all born with, but your body fixes that divot over time. This is a genetic mutation right here. That divot, you're all born with that divot, but people that have Apert syndrome and other cranial genetic mutations, they'll have the front part of their head get real long real tall, and then it slopes down, and then the back part will grow backwards a little bit, leaving a little divot. And if you're in the water, you'll have a little puddle of water on the top of your little divot head, just like the yokai Kappa is said to have. And it's said that if you knock him off balance and spill the water from his head, that you'll disorient him and he won't mess with you. That's because you just gave a mentally handicapped human being vertigo, because their brains are sensitive and messed up, and you know what I mean? Like, you spilled the water. The water has nothing to do with it. It's just him being thrown off balanced. See the big bug eyes? Now look back at some of those portraits and paintings from the medieval times, and you'll see the same bug eyes on many of those people. Not only can Apert syndrome and other genetic mutations take away some of your fingers, fusing them together, it can increase production of extra digits. This is a real hand. This is not AI. Remember this movie? The Princess Bride? My father was slaughtered by a six-fingered man. He was looking for the six-fingered man. Well, what was so special about the six-fingered man in The Princess Bride? He was noble. He was of nobility. Right? A lot of these nobles tend to have the same genetic mutation. They tend to be showing you that they are genetically related to people who lived for hundreds and hundreds of years, who lived long and prospered from the underworld. They came up here to the surface, used superior intellect for those who had brains that, you know, weren't all messed up or whatever. You would have superior intellect if you lived to be 500 years old. Okay, just from life experience. Okay, most likely. There's probably anomalies and exceptions, but they're telling you they harken back to people who are genetic mutants. This is a real football player. This is a real NFL football player. This guy is in the NFL. He's got 6 fingers. This is a whole family. This is not AI. You can look this up. You can find videos. This is a whole family in South America. Right now, today. All of them have 6, well, except for that kid. He missed out. But these people, 6 fingers. Look at this girl. 6 fingers on their hands. Genetic mutations today. This is a part of prophecy, as a matter of fact. There are many different prophecies that say what once happened in the past will happen again before the world ends. That these genetic mutations will come back, and they will come back in full force as the radioactivity increases up here in the crust of the earth closer to where we live. As the sun gets hotter and hotter. Here's another picture. A dude with 6 fingers. This is from a movie. This is supposed to be fictional. Bruce Almighty. He puts his hand behind his back and he asks Morgan Freeman to guess how many fingers he's holding up. He said 7. He goes, ha, ha, ha. And he's got 7 fingers. And you can have more than 6. There's people out there that have like 12 fingers on one hand, 8 fingers on one hand. 7's not too bad. I've seen worse. It's no wonder why they hide their hands. Why they don't want people who have their one hand behind their back, one tucked in, wearing gloves and stuff all the time. You know what I mean? It is no wonder that there are secret societies that have special hand signs and stuff that hide their hands when they're out in public, usually. Maybe because they need to, because they actually have a genetic mutation happening. Or maybe over time, because that became a sign of those people for so long, even when you don't have that mutation, you're paying homage to those who did. You're letting people know where your family history comes from, your bloodline, your DNA, your genetics, where it stems back to. Gog and Magog, the underworld people, the devils. Oftentimes, the white devils. You'll see it's mostly Caucasians on the list here. It doesn't only happen to Caucasians, like we saw with the Zimbabwe tribe, okay? But look at all these people in some kind of affiliation with something, some people, some tribe that needs to hide a body part. And in other places, they're showing you those body parts look like bird feet, look like claws, and they're portrayed as the quintessential, stereotypical devil. And they carry with them the devil's hand as a sign to let one another know we come from this place. We come from the underworld itself. Look at that hairy devil. Hairy, red devil, wild man. Just like in the biblical example of a character, this patriarch in the Bible named Jacob, and his brother Esau. Esau was a genetic mutation. Esau was a satyr. Esau was a goat man. As a matter of fact, when Jacob wanted to trick his blind father into thinking that he was his brother, he went and got some goat hair and put it on his arm and let his father feel it to make sure that he was going to give him the right blessing. He was pretending to be that. And this guy was hunted down and killed and had a certain marker about him. I don't know, maybe you could say it was the mark of Cain. A lot of people speculate and wonder what the mark of Cain was. So people would see him and be scared and run away and stuff. So this is your typical fallen angel look. Long, Vulcan, pointy ears. They live for a very long time. These creatures, okay, can come up from inside of the earth, creatures that live for a very long time because of the conditions inside of the earth. You also have creatures, humanoids, I should say, that are human, that have skin, just like how I have skin. They're just as human as I am, but they're from different places. So they adapt to those places genetically at the genetic level, and they change. If they live for hundreds and hundreds of years, they have really pointy ears. If they have technology that allows them to fly, whether they be in the earth or up above us, they will put wings on them in antiquity. They don't actually have wings. See, this devil, that's the devil right there. He looks like more like a Bigfoot with horns. That looks like Krampus. That is Krampus without a tail. Sometimes they had a tail, sometimes they didn't. Sometimes they had horns, sometimes they didn't. Sometimes they were very hairy and covered in hair. These particular devils looked like bulls. Like bull people. Look at the bulging eye. You see that big bulging eye? Cyclopeanism or cyclopses existed. They exist today. It's just that they don't survive for very long. But imagine in a world where genetic mutations are helped by Mother Nature, by the atmosphere being electrically amplified and stimulating your collagen and your elastin and literally rejuvenating your soul, invigorating your very soul, your essence and your life force, your vril, some people would call it, who live in the inner earth. How powerful your soul is, how tired you get, how much you need to eat and consume is based upon how strong your spirit is. How quiet, how much energy you have is based on how strong your spirit is. And your spirit is going to be amplified that based on the conditions around you at the time of your birth. This is basic astrology. Here are some ancient devils. This is what they look like. So you can see the split hand, split feet. They look human enough. This guy actually has a haircut. Horns growing up out of their head. This is like Bart Simpson with feathers or something. Right? You can see they look very human-like with the split feet. Devil's feet. Inner earth feet. Inner earth hands. See that? The 3 fingers there? They're not just making this up. They're not just creative. They're super creative and they're just making it up. They're embellishing what already exists. What is the 2 fingers? Right? The furry wild men, the horned men. Humans can grow horns. This is a picture I've shown before of an old lady that literally grew a horn right out of her head. Oftentimes you'll find more people that have horns. Sometimes they're called cutaneous horns or similar to like a fingernail or whatever. I don't care what way you want to spin it. It's a horn. People can grow horns. And if you live to be old enough and you start having genetic mutations or anomalies with your actual bone structure, your skull and stuff, you can actually grow horns that are part of bone. These horns are more made out of like fingernail or teeth type structures than they are bone. Or I'd say fingernail closer, right? This is a dude that grew a huge horn right out of the back of his head. Old Chinese man. Here's somebody that grew a horn on their cheek. So horns don't have to just grow right here where you like them to be on the devil. They can grow all over the face. As a matter of fact, if you get enough of them, they can look like teeth. If you have two big horns sticking up out of your lip or out of your jaw right down here, now you look like that. But we don't understand that in the modern world because we don't understand genetic mutation and apply it into the past and go, oh, I wonder if that's a genetic mutation. It's not actually a person that has gigantic vampire teeth that stick up and they can never close their mouths because they can't put their lips together. It's actual horns growing out of the skin. They can still close their mouth. They can still close their lips and stuff. So you have this. Here's another one, a horn that just grows right off the cheek, right off the face in different places. It can grow anywhere, really. And so here's just, this is a fictitious drawing or whatever, somebody dressed up, but it's not altogether unlikely that people looked like that or resembled that in antiquity. Here's a movie I just watched with my son. Shout out to my boy. High five. Mortal Kombat Part 2. You would think it's just all fiction. It's just all make-believe. It's all fantasy. None of it is real. When in reality, this guy just has a bunch of those horns growing all over his face. That's not his teeth. He's not eating someone with those horns. He has real teeth behind those. That's why in the movie, he can actually say ma and ba and stuff that he would never be able to say if those were actual teeth. And he has no lips. And he's got horns growing on different parts of his arms and stuff like that too. There are people that have genetic abnormalities that don't just grow out of the head. I've seen people that have hands that look like Groot. People that look like trees. People that look like they're made out of something like the Thing from the Fantastic Four. Here's a black dude growing a horn out of his head, right off the top. These are real pictures. Tails. At least 40 babies were born with tails. It says right there. Sometimes people are actually born with tails growing right out of their tailbone. You know what happens? The doctors freak out and they cut them off because they don't want, the parents don't want to raise a little freak, a little circus sideshow. But people are born with tails around the world. And in antiquity, there might be conditions that necessitate having a tail where you would be better off having and growing out a tail. Because you need to balance better in a world that has less gravity or more buoyancy or however you want to see that. A tail would help you out. This is called Territology. Territology comes from a word that in ancient times meant the study of monsters. These were considered to be monstrous births. Animals and people. This is a two-headed cow. This happens all the time, man. I've seen 100 two-headed cows in my life. This is straight from a video game called Fallout, where they have this cow called the Brahmin, and you think it's just fictitious. A two-headed cow walking around. Oh my God, check that out. That's crazy. But it's real. There are two-headed cows, two-headed snakes. There are two-headed human beings. Territology, the study of monstrous humans or monsters. Monsters. Monstrous tribes. This is just this is a thumbnail from a video that I made about monstrous tribes in the Middle Ages specifically. But here, let's look at some examples of genetic mutations in antiquity. Here you have a guy, bug-eyed, with an arm growing right out of his freaking neck. This is not fiction. This isn't like, wouldn't that be crazy? This is an actual account. This is history. This is recorded evidence that these types of people lived and walked among us. Here is a person that has two bodies and one head. He's kind of holding on to himself. They share one face. This exists today. I have seen examples of people that have two bodies and share one head. They typically don't live to be very long under today's conditions. Here's another one. This guy's got some kind of like avatar looking ponytail. You see that? Remember in Avatar how they like use their ponytail to like connect to the animals or whatever, right? That's what this guy has. These people are connected at the butt or tailbone. They were born like that. They grew to be old. They have hunchbacks, okay? Scoliosis. In the modern world, they don't live such awesome lives as they used to during a time whenever the environment allowed them to live longer and healthier and stuff like that. But under today's environmental conditions or the world conditions that we have of less energy in the world, these types of people don't last very long. And if they do, it's really strange. Here is a whole bunch of tribes of strange devil people that lived just outside of the holy city, just outside of ancient Jerusalem, not modern Jerusalem, okay, because that's not actually Jerusalem. The center of the world was Jerusalem, and that was at the North Pole. But here's a whole bunch of different tribes of weird people, from cannibals to pig-headed people to hunchbacks to one-legged people, people who have body parts fused together. Let's take a look at some of them, okay? Here you can see, this is not fiction from the Middle Ages. This is not fiction from antiquity. There were people who were born with dog heads, pig heads, etc. There were people that looked like they had no heads at all because their face was way down here in their chest. I'll tell you about those in a minute. There were monopods, people that had one leg, people with two heads, women that were super hairy and grew beards and all kinds of stuff, people that had earlobes that just drooped and drooped and drooped, people that had extra sets of arms and sometimes legs, people that had one eyeball, cyclopeanism or cyclopses, etc. They were on maps in antiquity. People knew the location. Here's Jerusalem in the middle of the world where it should be. Outside, around the outer edge, is all these mutated tribes. This is the Garden of Eden. This is Hyperborea. This is Atlantis. It is throwing off radiation all the way around, which is why you find these tribes all the way around. They're genetic mutants. And they're oftentimes were very hairy, like these guys. You got the guy who has his head way down in his stomach. You got this dog-headed guy who's all hairy. You got this one-legged dude who's super hairy, one-eyed guy, These are genetic mutations that actually lived, not one-offs. These represent tribes, just like that tribe in Zimbabwe. Wild men, hairy people. This is basically Bigfoot in the medieval times. This is that Bigfoot I was trying to show you earlier. That's in the Systeine Chapel right behind Jesus. Take a look. Hairy people, huge ears, horns sticking right out of their heads. The dude looks like a Bigfoot. I don't even know what else to say. That's Bigfoot right there behind Jesus. Whole family of them. Weird bird feet, right? Fused together appendages. This is the dog-headed tribe. This is the cynocephali, hairy people. Oftentimes, their mouths might protrude and stick out. They called them cynocephali. Like I said, they weren't always evil. They weren't always bad. Some of them changed their ways and repented. Most notably, Saint Christopher, who was a dog-headed saint in Catholicism. Now, the Catholics went and did a number on his face and made him a Caucasian guy. Blonde hair, blue eyes, Caucasian guy, the whole thing. Over time, because they don't want to have this scar on their history books. But if you look, they couldn't get rid of all the evidence. There's too many examples of Saint Christopher with a big fat dog face. Sometimes it looks like he has a horse face. Sometimes it looks like he has a pig face. A noble. He was seen as a noble too, and he had ridiculous strength. Saint Christopher in particular. Sometimes they look like monkeys, mouth sticking out or whatever, hairy, humanoid looking. Sometimes they look like werewolves. Sometimes they look like big wild men, Bigfoot, etc. looks like a traditional werewolf. Modern werewolves are just this with cartoon features where they actually put the face, the snout of a dog and all this stuff, and they combine stuff. But what it is, it's a genetic disorder. It's a mutation called hypertrichosis, where fur grows all over the face. This is real people today who have what's called werewolf syndrome or hypertrichosis. They are wild people, or they would have been seen as wild people in antiquity. Now imagine this guy is not so groomed and showers and uses shampoo and everything. Imagine he's out in the forest living for a very long time. He gets wet, moss and bacteria and God knows what starts to grow on his furry body. He's going to turn into a green giant if he's gigantic, like most of them were. If he's a good one, he'll be a jolly green giant. This is somebody with their head in the middle of their body, in their chest. They were often called the blemmies or blemias. These are just all fictitious accounts, and they're not real pictures of the blemmy. Okay, just like that's not a real picture. They're all cartoonified versions. In antiquity, people would travel to these places where they saw entire tribes of people who had their head in their chest. They were hunchbacks. This is their genetic mutation. Their shoulders appear to go all the way up here, and they have their face right there in the middle, or what looks like the middle of their chest. If you looked at them from a side angle, it would look like that. This is the blemmy. It's not just a headless person. You can't have a headless person. You have to have a brain that had like an eyeball here and an eyeball here. No. It's the head that goes down way far, and it looks like the neck and everything and shoulders are up above the head when you look at them straight on. You have people the panodi, who had earlobes that just stretched, and they had huge, gigantic ears, like we were talking about. There's people today that they just stretch and stretch and stretch their skin, and they can become just like the panodi, where they have huge, gigantic ears or very long ear lobes or whatever. Now imagine you live during a time whenever the skin can stretch abnormally far. You have the antipodes, people whose legs are backwards. Well, you think, no way. And they were said to be really fast runners too. That's why they got this dude running. Antipodes, people with legs backwards. You would think to yourself, nah, that's just medieval fiction. They didn't understand anything back then. Maybe they saw an animal and they thought it was a human. Wrong. There's actual human beings today that are born with their legs backwards. There's actual antipodes, people who have legs born the wrong direction. That woman is sitting down forwards. Her legs are backwards. Antipodes exist. This girl was in a lot of circus sideshows. She was called the Camel Girl. She was able to hyperextend her knees and stuff to make backwards feet. These are monopods, people born with one foot. These are mutants. These are devils. These are people with otherworldly abilities, super abilities. Sometimes monopods were said to be super fast runners. They just hopped super far. I'm sure they were great swimmers as well. They had both legs fused into one giant foot. Just like if they were in the water, you would swear to God they were a fish person or a merman or a merwoman. Their legs are genetically fused, just like the Apert syndrome can fuse the fingers and make the toes and all that stuff. It does the same thing with the legs. Your skin, if it's not programmed correctly, can merge with your skin. As a matter of fact, if it's not programmed correctly, you're in danger of merging with someone else's skin. And there's stories of that happening too. As a matter of fact, I just watched a movie about that. I don't remember what it was called, but there's some movie that's out right now where this man and woman like merge together. Their skin, when they touch, it like bonds. And that's possible. It's called mermaid disease. When people are born with their leg muscles and everything fused together. And they don't tend to make it very long in the world today, right? Unless they get surgery and stuff like that. But like these are their bones. They have two legs. They're just fused. The skin is fused all the way around. The skin is confused. These are mutants, fish people. So you look at cartoons like He-Man, and you can look at all of these characters, and you can realize that they are based in reality. That each one of these, although it seems to be a fictitious, not real or whatever, it's just a very colorful, cartoonized, more beautiful version than the actual reality of genetic mutations in our world. These underworld denizens, these devils that come up from within the mountains or live in Snake Mountain or Gray Skull or whatever you want to say. Now, this is I want to go back to the Systeine Chapel. Okay. There's this huge painting right behind the statue of Jesus called The Last Judgment. And I want to show you some of this stuff because there's devils shown to you in this picture. This guy right here, he represents a devil from the underworld. Okay. He kind of looks like he's not doing too good. He looks sickly. Look at his hand. You see? He's throwing that same W or whatever. And this guy's foot looks like it could possibly be split right there. I don't know, but I did want to point out that guy's foot. Let's look at some more parts of this picture. Let's check out this devil. So here's a devil that is holding on to. They're trying to keep these people from floating up to the heavens, it looks like, during this depressurization where people are floating up into the sky. Let's check out this devil. I know he's the devil because he's got horns, or at least one horn right there, and maybe a gigantic ear or something. He's human. You can see he's clearly human. But look at his feet. Very split looking. The toes are very split looking right down there. This guy's also a devil. Look at those ears. Long Vulcan ears. Vulcan. Volcano. Cannibal. Cannibals. Look at the bug eyes. Huge bug eyes, right? These are all symptoms of a particular genetic mutation, as we've seen time and time again. I think these ones, let's see, what do we got here? Oh yeah, that's right. So the hand symbol, once again, it's hidden in the picture right here. The hidden hand. Let's see what else, if there's anything else going on here. This next one, oh, this is, I think that's supposed to be Jesus, or I don't know who that's supposed to be in the middle, but possibly Jesus right there in the middle. Everyone's kind of surrounding him. But look at his hand. Same hand sign. Michelangelo, one of the Ninja Turtles, by the way, drew this picture in the Sistine Chapel. Right? I'm sure you can find this in the works of Raphael and Leonardo da Vinci and the others, okay? Same hand signs. Hidden in the picture itself. Check this guy's hand out. Look at that. You see that? Not even hiding it there. He just straight up has the Vulcan hand. Right? Boom, Vulcan hand. What else we got? Here's some actual demons off to the background. The earth opens up and the Gog and Magog, monstrous races, mutant giants and stuff, are like pulling these people down. Okay, they're like, now it's your turn. Let's see how you like it. And this is what many of the legends and stories and myths indicate, is that there are races of beings down there who look down upon us from underneath and they say, shame on you. You guys inherited all this beauty. You guys don't have these genetic defects, and you have altogether screwed over the surface world. You have altogether become evil and corrupt. And the legends and the Bible itself indicates these races of human beings are going to be released. Whenever Gog and Magog, that seal is broken, and they're going to come up here and they're going to go around and judge. There's going to be a huge war and they're going to judge people up here, according to tradition. You can see this guy's got horns. He's got, the markers of genetic mutation in different places. Let's see. There's another horned demon down in the underworld. This one's even red. This one looks like it's got like a bony face, almost like Skeletor or bird face. There's some other ones. So this one, this is like a serpent that's spiraling around this dude. He's caught. There's like tentacles. See those tentacles coming up out of the ground? Could be plasma, but it could also possibly be gigantic inner earth snakes, worms, God knows. There's another devilish looking dude back there. More horned people and stuff, more bug-eyed people. Here's another shot of the Bigfoots that are right behind the statue of Jesus, front and center. So nobody sees this though. They're looking at Jesus and the statue and they're just kind of taking it all in. They're not examining it. They're not studying it. They're not asking, what is that? Where does that come from? They just think it's all decorative. Oh, let's just put a decorative Bigfoot right behind Jesus, front and center, right? Here's the hand sign again. Here's a sort of lobster claw going on with this chick with the bug eyes. Boom. Here's another one. They're sort of doing the devil horns looking deal right here. I don't know what else to call that. I mean, it looks like it's just two fingers, right? There's definitely not pointing. Look, what hand is that? That's his right hand. So if I do the same thing, like, how do I do that? I can't because the finger's on the wrong side. See? My fingers are up here. If I put them down, it's still a bump. His is straight. So it'd be like that, but no thumb. And like that maybe, but it's the wrong hand. That's a mutated hand. What else we got here? Normal ones over here. That one's more like, actually, these are fused. So this one over here looks like they're fused together, or at least symbolically fused together, right? There's the claw, the devil's hand. And it's funny that they put these things on Jesus himself, right? Kind of taking ownership of the story or taking ownership of that religion or whatever. Interesting. That takes us to the deal with the devil. So the deal with the devil is not like saying some prayer like the opposite of the prayer of salvation, and you're like praying to the main antagonist of the earth, which is Satan, and you're asking Satan to be a millionaire or anything like that. It's a physical, actual deal. It's a contract that is physical that you are making, that a person makes with these underworld entities, with these mutated gigantic humans that live for a very long time in the underworld. Aliens, to us up here on the surface, they're interterrestrials. You're making a deal with them. You're contracting with them. What is the contract? These people in Hollywood and the music industry and stuff, they're sharing with you the secrets that I have just freely given to you in the form of riddles and, you know, their puzzles and stuff like that. Like, listen to their lyrics. They're not simple songs anymore. These people are sharing the secrets of the world with you, and they have been contracted to do so because they're in tune. They're the most creative out of all of us up here, so they get recruited by inner earth people. They're usually very pretty looking people because they're putting you in the public eye. So they want the perfect genetic specimen, we'll say, who has the ability to tap into these truths and share them with you through their music or actors or whatever it may be, but they're also pleasing to look at. They don't have all of those genetic markers of mutants. The mutant wants to make a deal with you for your soul. What is your soul? Well, I'm going to speculate. You guys are welcome to have your thoughts and your opinions on what the soul is. Is it like this windy substance that's in your body, or, you know, is it like a ghost, or is it a plasma, whatever? I'm going to speak for these people, and I'm going to speak for the elite of the world and the ruling class of the world, not as one of them, obviously, because I'm super poor, but as somebody who has taken no oaths, no vows, no affiliation with any type of fraternal organization, somebody that has discovered it on my own, and therefore I can freely give it away. I found it for free. I'm going to give it for free. They want your DNA, simply put. Well, not maybe you in particular. I don't know if you qualify, but they find certain people that they consider to have perfect, pristine, great DNA, and they're collecting it. And that's why you need to sign this devil's contract with your blood. The devil's contract, the deal with the devil, is always signed in blood. They don't even care if you sign your name. They just want a dot of your blood because that's your soul. That is your DNA. Your life is in that blood. And they can now take it, because you have just given it to them, all the information at the genetic level, and I'm sure that they're intelligent enough, they have geneticists in the underworld, where they can now clone you. And they can take their brains, their minds, their memories, whatever, with advanced technology that comes from the aliens inside of the earth, and they can jump into your body and walk around as you. or as a copy or as a clone of you. And that is the deal that you are making. And that's why you see so many of the same celebrities over and over and over all throughout history. I'm getting excited. I love making connections. You know what I mean? So the deal with the devil, you need to put a little marker, put your blood on the paper, and they will have a copy of your DNA, and it's theirs. And you have no rights. I mean, this body is mine, right? Like if I can issue a copyright strike to someone that copies my likeness, this very video, why can't I get legal with people who are trying to make a copy of me and steal my likeness? Even people who take a picture, like the Native Americans, many Native American tribes, they don't like the older ones. They do not allow you to take their pictures because they believe if you take their picture, you will steal their soul. You will have their likeness. And with AI now, you can literally take someone's picture and make them do anything you want. They can be your slave in any way, form, or fashion. They can talk to you. You can make their image come to life. You can make their image good, evil, something that they might not want it to be. And that's why it belongs to you. And that's why they draw up these contracts. And you have to sign it with your blood. You have to literally give your blood to them. And that's my presentation on the devil's hand. If you liked this presentation, let me know what your favorite part was. Let me know if you got something good in the comments section. Check out my Patreon because I'm going to start uploading all of my Chasing the Apocalypse episodes to my Patreon account. And if you want to jump in the credits, that's on my Patreon. If you want to check out my website, go to JayDreamerZ.com. Until next time, I'm JayDreamer saying good vibes and goodbye.
In a time when an ancient cataclysm is about to return, one book holds the key to unlocking the biggest secret in all of history. JayDreamerZ presents Ancient Oblivion, the Plasma Apocalypse. Study it, and you'll discover the very real details behind the reoccurring event that resets civilizations and reshapes the entire world. Bridging the gap between fiction and fact, this book is a must-have for all truth seekers. Then in his second book, you'll learn about the one place of refuge from this world storm. You'll explore the ends of the earth, find the fountain of youth, and envision yourself enveloped in the vapor canopy. In Ancient Oblivion, Return to Hyperborea, available now. Order direct from JayDreamerZ and receive your very own autographed copy. Go to JayDreamerZ.com for more information on our Ancient Oblivion and the Plasma Apocalypse, and sign up for a free 24-hour cram session with a complimentary day pass. The end is near, so order now before it's too late.